he only take so many pictures inside the fort, right? So he kept requesting permission from the officers at Fort Phil Kearny to do what? Go outside the fort and take some pictures. So Glover constantly approached commanding officers at Fort Phil Kearny and requested permission to go outside the fort to take photographs. Well, as could be expected, he was always quickly denied permission to go outside the fort. And finally, even after witnessing these Indian ambushes on a regular basis around the fort, he often wandered out of the fort unarmed and alone. Snuck off, basically, disregarded his own safety. So he would sneak out, take a few pictures, and sneak back in. Well, on September 16th of 1866, his disregard for his own safety finally caught up. September 16th, 1866, his body was found a short distance from the fort. His long, flowing Macklin Wiley hair was totally removed. I'm guessing not, as yours could be removed from a nice barber. It's maybe not so nicely removed. He lay face down when they found him, and his back was split wide open with a tomahawk. So his long flowing hair was totally removed. He lay face down, and his back was split wide open by a tomahawk. My guess is he did not experience a good death. My guess is he was probably tortured, because the Indians considered photography, the little they knew about it, as bad medicine. So I'll bet you, when they found this guy with his camera set up, and they caught him, I bet he suffered a miserable death. It was more than likely torture. Interestingly, any photos that Glover did successfully take during his time at Fort Laramie, Virginia City, Montana, and Fort Phil Kearny were never recovered. Never recovered a photo. What's kind of sad historically, that this kind of goofy guy but talented guy could have really created a pictorial history of the time and life of the American West. Unfortunately, his disregard for his own safety left him with not a photo to be shown. Nobody could ever find him. Okay? All right, let's see what we got left. We have the Fetterman fight. Okay, we might not get all the way through this, but I would like to get through a lot of it today. For those of you that are going to be gone tomorrow, Friday, the more we get done today, the less you'll have to recoup on the video. And this is a very important battle you're going to need to know. Well, let's think about this. You think these Indians would love to kill every one of these soldiers and civilians in Fort Phil Kearny? Well, they absolutely were dying, no pun intended. What's the only way they're going to get to kill any of them after the fort's constructed? Huh? No, they're not going to. That's a good comment, but remember, they're not going to attack a military fortified unit. How? They got to get them out of the fort. They got to somehow get them out of the fort. So since the soldiers were very apprehensive to come out of the fort in large numbers, the Indians believed the only way to kill them in numbers would be to lure them out of the fort. Now, there was a kind of a landmark, geographical landmark, other than Pilot's Knob in the area of Fort Phil Kearny, and it was a ridge called Lodge Trail Ridge. And it was a ridge not as high as Pilot's Knob, but a ridge that stood a ways from the fort. Lodge Trail Ridge. Now you gotta remember that Indian warriors are only gonna fight when the advantage is on their side. But by December 21st of 1866, these Indians had developed a strategy which would allow them to lure soldiers out of Fort Phil Kearny. And when they lure these soldiers out of Fort Phil Kearny, this is going to be known in Western United States history as the Fetterman Fight, sometimes called the Fetterman Massacre. Now in a massacre, what happens? On either side in a massacre? All of them, usually. If it's a massacre, no one lives to tell the story, right? So this is called the Fetterman Fight, but it's also sometimes called in history, I think incorrectly, the Fetterman Massacre. Okay? Now, let's talk about this. When you think about U.S. history, especially Western U.S. history, whenever the Indian warriors are victorious over the military, it's considered a massacre. Whenever a military victory is established by the Army against Native Americans, we call it a fight or a battle. It's just kind of ironic how that goes. Well, on December 21st, 1866, lookouts that were on top of Pilot's Knob signaled to the fort that a wood train was under assault by Indian warriors. What's a wood train? It's a wagon going out to cut and bring back wood. Okay? Now, is this before or after the fort was completed? December 21st. After. So, what's the wood being used for? It could have been used for building furniture. It could have been used for building buildings, because it's just about a month or so after they got the walls done, right? Well, anyway, there is a wood train out there that's being under assault by Indian warriors. What's going to happen if all those people do not get killed that are out there cutting wood? They're going to have to send somebody out, right? Now, that's okay, because had they done that before, sure, they had been protecting the wood trains the whole time. Now, a captain by the name of William Fetterman requested to lead his military men on a charge against those Indian warriors to beat them back to relieve the wood train. Not unusual. So when the lookouts on Pilot's Knob signaled down, hey, there's a wood train under attack, somebody had to go out and relieve that wood train from attack, and Captain William Fetterman volunteered with his men to go out and do that. And Carrington granted him permission. Now, Fetterman took 83 soldiers out of the gates of Fort Phil Kearny to relieve that wood train. I shouldn't say 83 soldiers, he took 83 people. "49 were infantrymen." What does that mean? If you're an infantryman, you're what? On the ground. On the ground. He took 27 cavalrymen. What's that mean? On horses. He took 3 officers and 4 civilians. So when Captain William Fetterman left Fort Phil Kearny to relieve the wood train, he took 83 men, 49 infantrymen, 27 cavalrymen, 3 officers, and 4 civilians. And Fetterman was a little arrogant. He wasn't as arrogant as George Custer, which you would hear about if we did the Battle of the Bighorn. But he once said, "Give me 80 men and I will ride through the entire Sioux Nation." He actually said that. "Give me 80 men and I will ride through the entire Sioux Nation." Matter of fact, they wrote a book about this, about Captain Fetterman. The Myth of the Fetterman Fight, and the name of the book is "Give Me 80 Men." That's what he said. "Give me 80 men, and I'll ride completely through the Sioux Nation." Now here's the key to this whole thing. Fetterman receives orders from Colonel Carrington. Now I really want you to write these down because they were clear and specific. So, as Fetterman left Fort Phil Kearny, he was given specific orders by Colonel Carrington. And this is what he said, quote, "Relieve the wood train from Indian attack, but do not pursue the enemy beyond Lodge Trail Ridge." He said, relieve the wood train from Indian attack, but do not pursue the enemy beyond Lodge Trail Ridge. Because they felt comfortable defending the fort and the wood train on the inside, so to speak, of Lodge Trail Ridge. But Carrington knew if any of his men, soldiers, ever went over Lodge Trail Ridge, they would be vulnerable to Indian attack and probably death. Okay? So he said, relieve the wood train from Indian attack, but do not pursue the enemy beyond Lodge Trail Ridge. He repeated those orders to Fetterman 3 times before he left. He repeated it 3 times. Relieve the wood train from Indian attack, but do not pursue the enemy beyond Lodge Trail Ridge. After receiving those orders 3 times, Fetterman and his men leave Fort Phil Kearny at 11:15 a.m. December 21st, 1866. Time of Fetterman's departure, 11:15 a.m. December 21st, 1866. Now, do we know the full story if this was a massacre? And if it's a massacre, who got killed? Soldiers. Do we know the whole story on what happened? No, but we come to this conclusion based on study and evidence, okay? Here's what happened. This was a setup. This attack on the wood train really wasn't to really harm the wood train. It was to get the soldiers out of the fort. Crazy Horse and 7 warriors actually acted as decoys as Captain Fetterman and his soldiers set out to relieve the wood train. And they did, easily relieve the wood train. And where did the command halt as ordered? At the crest of Lodge Trail Ridge. Were they supposed to go over? No. So, Fetterman does his job. He relieves the wood train. He takes his command to the crest of Lodge Trail Ridge, reaches that area at 11:45 a.m. and looks over the ridge and sees not much. You know what he sees? Crazy Horse and his 7 warriors down in the valley. And you know what that crazy Horse and his warriors are doing as Captain Fetterman looks over the ridge at him? They were cursing at him, yelling curse words up at Fetterman. What did Fetterman think about that? Didn't like it. Not only doing that, they gave him various hand gestures. Seriously. So they're down in the bottom, yelling cuss words at him, giving him hand gestures. And finally, the 7 and Crazy Horse turn around, and what do they do to Captain Fetterman as he looks over the ridge? What? Mooned him. Absolutely mooned him. So they're just aggravating him. So they're cussing at him, they're giving him the finger, so to speak, and they're mooning him. And what does Fetterman do? Well, let me even go farther. According to the Indian account, Crazy Horse even built a fire just out of range of the soldiers' weapons who were on the top of Lodge Trail Ridge and warmed his hands and looked up at him. Well, Fetterman could take no more. So he ordered his men to advance towards the 8 decoys, Crazy Horse and the other 7, and they go over Lodge Trail Ridge after those decoys. As Fetterman's command advances over the ridge and into that valley, and what they had, kids, was basically over this ridge a valley surrounded by other ridges. Exactly what Crazy Horse wanted. And as Fetterman's command advanced over the ridge and into that valley, approximately 2,000 Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors waited in ambush, all hid in the outskirts of the valley, just waiting for him to come down. And I'll tell you tomorrow what happened to him in that valley. Wasn't pretty. It's not pretty. But we'll tell you some good information on tomorrow.